Hello and welcome to this Vulval Pain Society social media live, number 15. Can you believe it, of these social media lives? I'm Sharon Goulbear, Vulval Pain Society trustee, therapist and pain science educator. Do say hi or chuck an emoji in the comments if you are watching live, just so that I know that you can see and hear me okay. Any comments as we go along live today, just pop in the box. And Kay Thomas, our ops director, will keep an eye on them on Facebook. I'll do the same, and I'll also keep an eye on YouTube comments too. And of course, if you're watching the replay, absolutely do feel free to comment. But of course, if you are watching live today, you get the chance to have your questions answered. So today's guest is hugely knowledgeable on the connection between sleep and physical health, and of course, pain. So we're welcoming clinical psychologist, senior lecturer, and all-round incredible human being, Dr. Shreena Unadkat.
Hi everyone. Hello. Hi. Really glad and excited to be here.
So this is going to be great. And going to be so useful, I think, for so many people. Am I pronouncing your surname correctly?
Yes, so it's Unadkat. So think you mad cat. Run from there. That's the easiest way to pronounce it.
Brilliant. Okay. So Shreena, when we met, we met when we were panelists on a pain science webinar a little time ago. And at that point, I was struck by the wealth of knowledge that seemed to just kind of pour out from you, just really naturally. And I thought, hold on a second, we need to put that here. And I know that you've worked in physical health services for, is it the last 15 years?
Yeah, just about right.
Start off perhaps by just hearing a little bit about what you've been up to in those 15 years.
Sure. So hello everyone, really glad to be here. And as Sharon said, I'm Shreena, I'm a clinical psychologist. And so what we're talking about in the last 15 years is my whole journey through sort of from being an assistant psychologist right through to being a qualified psychologist. And in 2006, my first ever psychology job as an honorary assistant psychologist as part of my degree was in a chronic pain team. And at that time, I was entirely new to the field, and was really open to learning. And I was a wee whippersnapper of a sort of 20-year-old, which feels like a really long time ago now. And I guess I was working in a great team in Buckinghamshire, and I learned absolutely loads. And I think just then from there, whatever post I went into, even throughout training, once you have done some work with pain, you find that there are people who are experiencing sort of persistent pain throughout all populations of health and mental health. And so I tended to find that there were always people I could work with, and just the more things to learn really from patient groups across the board. And then when I qualified in 2015 as a clinical psychologist after my doctorate, the first post I took up, I was at the Input Pain Management Programme in central London, which is where me and Sharon have met one of our sort of joint colleagues, Laura, who's put us in touch. And that was a really good way to kind of advance that interest and advance the work that I was doing with people across the spectrum, really, with kind of persistent pain conditions. So I've stayed within physical health since then, and I've moved into paediatrics now, and now I work in paediatrics mostly.
Wow. You mentioned the Input team. Now, I know how special it could be to be involved in that. And for anyone who doesn't know, do you want to tell us a little bit more about that team?
So the Input Pain Management team is a team of multidisciplinary therapists who all work together in St Thomas's Hospital in central London. So it literally overlooks the Houses of Parliament. So on one side of the river is the Houses of Parliament, on the other side is St Thomas's. And it's a residential pain management programme with all clinicians, so physios, occupational therapists, nurses, and psychologists, all working from a kind of acceptance and commitment therapy perspective. And the idea is all of you come, you arrive, you stay for 3 weeks in the building with us, and we work with you on kind of your goals and the things that you are hoping to get towards. And it, I absolutely loved it working there, because it meant you could be with people in a really live way. It's hard. It was really hard work for us and for the patients, and the people who were involved in the services, but super rewarding. And yeah, really, really enjoyed it. Wouldn't ever have left unless I decided to move to Scotland, I think.
What made you move? Was it another job opportunity, or what was going on?
Yeah, so I decided to make the move to from adults to paediatrics a few years ago, and I got a job within paediatric sleep, which is why we are having this talk today, which I equally was as passionate about. And yeah, a kind of job opportunity came up in Scotland to work in general peds, and me and my partner and some friends, all of us decided to up and leave to see what it was like living in Glasgow. So 4 of us moved up together in the end, and I work at the Royal Hospital for Children in Glasgow now in stem cell transplant services. So I feel like I've worked in loads of different types of services, but no matter where you are, things like sleep and pain can be relatively, they're universal concepts. So you find that you end up working with pain and with sleep anyway.
Yeah. Shreena, I know that you mentioned you have a lived experience of pain for the last 2 years. And whilst, we don't need to go into any of the details unless you wish to share, would you say that lived experience has given you some further insights?
Absolutely, because I think it was probably about 2.5 years ago now, nearly 3 maybe, I developed kind of chronic widespread persistent pain. And then I chose to go through the health service as on the other side of the desk, and really experienced how that feels to get up to go to your GP, to have to say, no, I am experiencing this. This is something that's really happening, and how it impacts on, your life, your relationships, your sleep, your just all the areas of function. And I think the insight it really gave me is actually, no matter how much you know, it's still really difficult. Knowledge isn't the most important part of kind of managing pain. It's experience, and experiencing that you can do things and that you can move through. Things can improve a little bit, but it's really hard to engage with that, even if you can have an encyclopedic knowledge of pain, but when it comes to actually applying that, it's still really difficult. So yeah. I hope that rings true with some people.
I imagine it would, and certainly, I have had a lived experience of pain. I had vulval pain for at its worst for 10 years before I started, breaking free. But at that point, I didn't have much knowledge. But, subsequently, whenever I've experienced pain, there's this kind of moment of, oh, gosh, this is happening. And almost a pause before you kind of click into, okay, I know what this is about, and I know what I might need to do here. And isn't it strange that kind of happens? And I know that this past 17 months I've been going through, I'm having this experience of long COVID, and and that has brought up some vulval pain and some other kinds of pain as well. But bringing that knowledge back, sometimes, we can get quite tired with this experience. And I'm sure that people watching and listening to this would agree, it's where do you get the energy from to bring some of these resources in? And, we do need to reach out to other people. Sometimes that connection is important, and reaching out, we can't think that we can do it all ourselves, even if we have the knowledge. And that is out there. If I know health professionals watch this, so if there are any health professionals watching, and you specialize in pain and you think you can do it yourself, if you're experiencing pain, please reach out.
Yes.
Please
you
do
really
that.
you really do need a team, I always say, and not just I don't even really mean a professional team. I mean just your team around you to help you, through the like you say, Sharon, through the kind of application of that energy to be able to put in practice the things that you know, and even just being able to have the faith that you can do some things and that you can have an impact. I was amazed at how quickly my confidence plummeted as soon as I experienced pain, and especially with things like sleep and in the middle of the night when you're not thinking straight and you're awake and you're in pain, how much energy it takes to, and how much faith really it takes to kind of kind of click into the things that you know. So knowledge isn't everything.
Yes. we can never know everything, because we're always learning more. And when it comes to science, we're always learning more. This is not static stuff, right?
Absolutely,
so talking about science, should we leap into some basic sleep science? And you can start wherever you wish, and those of you watching live, just feel free to chuck questions in as we go along.
So I thought maybe a good way to start would be for me to just talk everybody through a few slides just around sleep, what a typical night's sleep is, I say typical, is supposed to look like, and what's really going on in your brain and body, not just at nighttime, but through the day to set up your sleep. And these slides take about 10 minutes. So what I'll do is I'll just talk through them. But please do put your questions up, and I'll stop sharing the slides as soon as we get to a point where I feel like I've talked enough. So right, let's share, and hopefully this will work beautifully. And Sharon, if you just give me a yes when you.
There we go.
Got it?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Right. So these are my sleep and pain slides. The two buildings that you can see at the moment are Big Ben, because that's where St Thomas's is, where I still work, and the Royal Hospital for Children. That's me at the Royal Hospital for Children. And another person who, if you're really interested in sleep, it's worth checking out, is Dr. Mike Farquhar, who is a pediatric sleep consultant. His Twitter account is just really knowledgeable when it comes to sleep, and he's always a good person to hit up for sleep knowledge. And I've stolen some.
Did you say Mike Harper?
Mike Farquhar.
Farquhar. Okay.
Yeah, he's there at the bottom of that slide. Hopefully you can see that. And I've stolen some of these slides from him. So hopefully he's okay with that. Okay, so really quickly, just to kind of let people know, in the UK, it's thought that we lose about 1 night of sleep per week because everybody's a little bit sleep deprived. And we wear that as a bit of a badge of pride, I think, in this country. You'll hear people say things like, oh, I can survive on 5 hours of sleep a night and I'm absolutely fine. When actually sleep issues are some of the most commonly reported in primary care. And I think one of the things which kind of gets my goat, both as a kind of pain sufferer and as a professional, is that people just assume that you will have bad sleep if you have pain, which actually isn't true, because then some improvements can be missed because those assumptions are made. I mean, this was a really, if you haven't had enough sleep, you can end up becoming quite irritable, feel a little bit on edge, maybe make some irrational decisions. This was a paper that was done on Donald Trump's tweets to try and figure out how much Donald Trump actually sleeps. Donald Trump doesn't sleep very much, looking at the timings of his tweets. Is that responsible for his emotional outbursts? I'm not saying it is, but it definitely can't help. So hopefully that impresses on you the importance of sleep on just managing your emotions in the daytime. So let's have a bit of a think about just what sleep looks like for everybody. So I want to talk you through this diagram, and I'll try and do it as briefly as I possibly can. This is what we call a hypnogram, or a typical night's sleep graph. Now, as you can see, what happens is we start off awake up here where it says 0, it's 0 hours sleep, and we step down these stages of sleep, down through N1, down through N2, down to N3. And N3 is our lovely slow wave sleep, which is where we do all of our growth, our repair, our bodily hormone function, all of that sort of loveliness. Then we jump back up to REM sleep, or rapid eye movement sleep, which is the red areas on the graph. And that's where we do a lot of our, that and also N1 and N2, which is our light sleep. That's where we do our memory learning, our emotional processing, all of that brain stuff that is really important for our learning and our emotions. One of those sleep cycles on an average person, average adult, takes about 90 minutes. So you go down through these cycles, you come back up to your REM, and that will take about 90 minutes. The important things to take away from this graph are we do most of our deep sleep in the first third of the night. So you see it says 0, 1, and 2, and 3 at the bottom. That's our hours of sleep. In the first 3 to 4 hours of the night, we will do most of the body stuff. And then as the morning comes on and as we get nearer and nearer waking, we get lighter and lighter sleep, and we do more of this REM brain stuff. So that's number one thing to keep in mind, and we'll talk a bit more about that later. The second thing to keep in mind is where these arrows are. Hopefully you can see those arrows. We all wake naturally many times a night. I mean, this says sort of about 3 or 4, but in truth, it's much more than that. And if all is being well, what happens is we just sort of open our eyes, close them back again, roll over and fall back to sleep again. However, if you are in pain or if you have a lot on your mind, if something has changed from the beginning of the night to those moments of waking, your brain will wake you up fully. So if you are the sort of person who wakes up in the night, really the question isn't why are you waking? Because everybody wakes in the night. The question is, why are you not falling back to sleep again? And what's stopping you from falling back to sleep? And we can go into that a little bit more and the things that can help in a few slides' time. As we get a bit older, sadly, when we're children, we get lots of lovely sleep. And then as you get older, as you can see, your sleep becomes more and more fragmented. So the older you get, you're more likely to wake up many, many times in the night. And that is still considered a normal sleep cycle. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense so far?
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Okay, we're going to steam on through. This next bit is for any of you that have ever lived with toddlers. If there's anybody in the chat, or Sharon, if you've ever lived with a toddler, you'll know what it's like to be around a child when they get overtired. I know I still get overtired at times, and here's why. It's because your sleep is not just governed by those sleep cycles, it's governed by a couple of what we call sleep rhythms, and I'll talk those through with you now. There are 2 sleep rhythms. The first one is process S, which is your sleep pressure. Really simple. That one's really simple. Essentially, it's a bit like hunger. The longer it's been since you were last asleep, the more your sleep pressure will build and you will feel sleepier. Easy peasy. A bit like the longer it's been since you last ate, the hungrier you will feel. So that's process C. The slightly more complicated one is process C, which is your circadian rhythm or your body clock. Now, most people have heard the term body clock, but circadian rhythm basically means the same thing. And essentially, your circadian rhythm is like a little guy in your brain telling you when it's time to get up and when it's time to go to bed. And there are lots and lots of things that this is influenced by, which we'll go into in a second. But if you've ever been jet lagged, if you've ever been on holiday, remember holidays? Remember when we could fly to other parts of the world before COVID? If you've ever experienced jet lag, then you'll know how strong your circadian rhythm is, because if it takes a couple of days to adjust, you feel terrible. So let's think about circadian rhythm. I'm going to go, so your circadian rhythm is set by this little area of your brain. It's very nerdy. I'm not going to go into it too much. The important thing to know is there's a bit of your brain which sets the master clock. And every single cell in your body has a clock, but it's all running off of this bit of your brain, which says this is daytime, this is nighttime. And it controls loads of stuff, that clock. It controls your heart rate, your blood pressure, your body temperature, even how you experience pain is controlled by your circadian rhythm. And I'll come more back to that when we talk a bit more about pain within sleep. So let me just talk you through this graph. and then we'll hopefully be able to stop sharing and come back to you guys. So this is a kind of time through the day. So you've got 9 a.m. through to the following 9 a.m. So let's imagine you've woken up at the beginning here, okay? Your circadian alerting signal, which is that man in your brain shouting it's time to be awake, is pretty low because it's early morning and you've just slept loads. Your sleep pressure is also low because you've just slept loads, so you're feeling quite good. And as you go through the day, what happens is your sleep pressure, this arrow at the top, it builds and it builds and it builds. And because of that, your circadian alerting signal needs to kick in. So it does. It kicks in really strongly and goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's counteract that sleep pressure and keep you awake. And it does that, and that's great. Now, at some point after lunch, there's a weird quirk in this, if you can see that red circle. Yeah, what happens is, at some point, the tug of war between your sleep pressure and your circadian alerting signal starts to slightly fail, and your sleep pressure wins a little bit. We think this might be because when we were cavemen, we used to take a little nap to be out the midday sun. And so we've evolved. Yeah, so we've evolved to have a little dip in how we're feeling after lunch to encourage us to sleep. Some cultures still do this. There are lots of cultures that still have a siesta and take advantage of this. Yeah, and that's because we have got this inbuilt, what we call a diurnal circadian rhythm. So it drops a little bit in the middle of the day. But don't worry, as you kind of go past lunch and as you get into your evening, your circadian alerting signal is back on it, shouting really loudly, it's time to stay awake, it's time to stay awake, counteracting a quite strong sleep pressure. And then if all is well, it all drops off, you start feeling really sleepy, you go to bed, and then and then your circadian alerting signal drops off and you start to feel really tired and you fall asleep. The other important part of this graph is the thing called the nadir, which is the bottom of the graph at the end here. Your whole circadian system drops to its lowest alert at about 2 hours before you wake up, or it changes for various people, but it's kind of early morning. And at that time, you have a really strong body temperature drop. Important when you're thinking about the temperature in your room, because if you are the sort of person who wraps up really warm, if you have a big body temperature drop in early morning, suddenly you're going to feel way too hot because your covers will be suffocating you. So yeah, important to know that. The last thing I'll say about this is the other important thing, which is a hormone called melatonin. Lots of people will have heard of melatonin because you can have it prescribed to help with sleep. It's a hormone, it's not a sedative, so it doesn't make you sleepy. All it does is it amplifies the signal to your brain saying it is time to sleep, go to bed. Now, if you are the sort of person who drops off on the sofa and then you get up and you go to bed and suddenly you're wide awake, what has happened is your melatonin has kicked in and gone, hey, it's time to sleep. You've fallen asleep. Then you've woken up because you're not in bed. And then your melatonin isn't working because your melatonin goes, okay, well, we're moving around now. So I guess we should be awake. So it kind of suppresses itself. Melatonin is really, really, it's very easily overridden by lots of other factors like anxiety, stress, pain, because your brain wants to have the ability to suppress your sleep if it feels that something threatening is around. So think about when we were cave women / cavemen. If a tiger wandered into your cave, your brain wanted the ability to shut down your sleep so that you could run away real quick. Unfortunately, your brain really doesn't know the difference between a worry and a stress about what's happening at work the next day and a tiger. So the same thing still happens. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing there because that's a lot of information in a very short period of time. And I would really be interested in your questions, and I'll pull up more slides if necessary, but we might just be able to answer them.
And so, okay, and we've talked about, it's quite natural to everyone wakes up during the night. That's perfectly natural. It's the going back to sleep that's the important bit.
Yeah.
So I hear people who experience pain say, I was woken up by my pain. Is that that what's happening? Are they being woken up by their pain, or is there something else going on?
So I am someone who quite often says I am woken up by my pain, because that's absolutely what it feels like is happening, because you get a jerk or something and suddenly you're awake. In reality, what's really going on is that you've come to the end of one of those sleep cycles, and your brain is nearing that really light space between awake and asleep. And your brain goes, I feel something's wrong in my body. I feel in pain. This doesn't feel good. Yeah. Can you just wake up to make sure that someone isn't punching you, or that something isn't, something terrifying isn't happening right now? So then what happens is your brain will wake you up fully. So your pain is sort of waking you up, but it's not that you've had a sudden stab of pain and then that's what's woken you up. It's that your brain has become aware of being in pain and has woken you up more fully because of that. Yeah. I guess the other thing I would say about that as well is that your this is all very medicine based, but your cortisol levels. So we have a hormone called cortisol, and your cortisol drops off over the night as you sleep. A lot of people feel that they are more in pain either at night time or kind of in the early hours of the morning. That's because your cortisol drops off and your inflammatory responses are higher as you near early morning. So your pain can actually be worse. So it's a combination of those two things, that your pain can feel a little bit worse and your brain has become aware of it, and you don't have the distractions of the world. You don't have, like kids screaming, TV on. That's all that's left, is that the pain is there, and that's what your brain has become aware of.
So, okay, that makes sense. And I hope that helps people kind of just understanding that, because kind of understanding that actually maybe it's not the pain that's waking us up, it's actually this sleep cycle, and that sort of awareness kicks in, because we talk about pain being a sort of conscious thing, don't we? And so rather than, if we're talking about strategies of getting back to sleep, rather than getting up and walking around, sounds like it's not a good idea. What might you suggest? And I get that this is going to be different for everyone.
Yes, yeah.
Strategies, but what kind of things are we talking about?
So it's interesting. If you are able to drop back off to sleep relatively quickly, then getting up and walking around isn't the thing to do, because it will wake you up. However, if you are also lying in bed for a really long time in pain, your brain is going to start associating your bed with being the place that you lie awake in pain. So actually then, yes, do get up and go, but don't do anything. Listen, nobody go jogging or anything like that. Don't do anything really super active. Don't even turn on a lot of lights. What we generally recommend is that by very dim light, you go and sit in a comfortable chair and you do something non-screen based that is going to help to calm and chill you out. That's much, as somebody who's been through it, that's much easier said than done. However, it really is, because what I started to do for quite a while is go and put on Netflix. And one of the things I didn't say is that, blue light can suppress your melatonin, because your melatonin is great, but it's a bit dumb, and it kind of goes, oh, blue light, it must be daytime. So then it kind of suppresses. So yeah, but now what I've done is I've put together a kind of nighttime box of stuff that I have put by a comfy chair in my bedroom, so it's not even far away from the bed. And I just get up, I go and sit in that, and I just read things, or I just I've got some knitting that I do, calming but distracting activity, and then go and do that.
Not too active by the sounds of it.
Yeah, nothing too active. And then if you're really struggling, what I would say is really important to just repeat whatever your bedtime routine is. Do that again. Just do it again. What we're trying to do is trick your brain back into falling asleep. That's the most important thing. And so sometimes by just getting up, doing whatever you normally do before bed, whether that's, brush your teeth, wash your face, get back out of your pajamas and back into them again, get back into bed, can sometimes trigger off that kind of sleep process once more.
That's a nice tip. I like that. We hear a lot about sleep hygiene, and you've mentioned the blue light behind devices, whether it's, your phone, laptop, whatever screen. And so we hear this thing about perhaps stop screen time an hour or two before going to bed. Now, is that useful? If that blue light inhibits melatonin, or should we just all put a red hue, behind our screens? What's ideal?
So there's what's ideal, and then there's what's real, I think is the way I think about it. Okay, so it's very different for everybody. For instance, my husband, and I hate him for it, he can fall asleep on his phone. It doesn't make a difference to him. He's never, ever. So if you're the sort of person who's always fallen asleep on your screen and it doesn't seem to be an issue, then it's not a problem. However, it's always worth trying to stop screens for an hour before, because of exactly what we've just said about the melatonin. We want to give your melatonin the best chance. Imagine your melatonin is a bit like a sort of like frightened deer. It gets really easily scared away by light, by stress, by noise. We want to give it the best chance to just ramp up and give your brain the strongest signal that it's time to sleep. There's a bit of a panic going around about screens at the moment, I think, though. And we, when I do this presentation, I always look at, there was a newspaper article that went around in 1859 or something, which talked about how frightening it was that children everywhere were playing chess way too much and it was interrupting their sleep. And they really shouldn't be playing chess, and it was robbing them of their intellect. And you could replace the word chess for phone, and it would be now. That's exactly what we're hearing. I would say don't panic about it. If it works for you, go for it. If it's not working for you, I would try and shut it down for an hour beforehand. It's not just light, though, is it? Because our phones hold everything. They hold our social connection. They hold our entertainment. They hold our work diaries. They hold everything. So your brain is always going to be being pulled by, I could just go and check that. I'll just check my to-do list. I'll just see who's still awake right now. I bet someone's still awake. And even more than the blue light, that's what's going to be exciting to your brain, is that you can always be entertained. So I can't think of anyone who actually follows this advice, but if you really want to try hard to change screens, we tell people to charge them in another room, to just, not just you, the whole family. So you need to get everyone in your house. And if you've got teenagers, good luck at that, trying to get them to put their phones in another room overnight. But get a family charging station in the kitchen, and everybody charges their phones in there. Everybody buys a £5 alarm clock from Boots that you can snooze, and you use that to wake up. And it won't work on its own, but it's a good thing to try, along with lots of other suggestions around sleep hygiene.
There's a good question here from Daria. Does it matter what time of night we go to bed? Are there ideal times to retire and get up, or is it only important to be on a regular schedule?
It's really important to be on a regular schedule. Your brain likes predictability and routine, but not if it stresses you out. If it's really stressing you out to try and get into a regular routine, the stress is also going to stop you from sleeping. So I guess the important thing is to understand what your body clock is like and work with that. So here, the question I would ask you is, imagine that, if pain aside, imagine you were on a 3-week holiday. Okay, no kids, no work, no distractions. And after you've done all of your catch-up sleep, okay, which everyone does, everyone will sleep a bit longer, and you're all caught up and you're all refreshed. What time would you fall asleep naturally, and what time would you wake up naturally? So that's pain aside, medication aside, if you can remember that. That is probably your natural time for falling asleep and waking. And most people are either morning people or evening people. Unfortunately, that's a biological reality. I am not a morning person. I am definitely an evening person. And what that means is if you left me to it, I would fall asleep probably about midnight, and I would wake up at about 9, half 8, 9 naturally. And that tells me two things. It tells me that I am a late sleeper naturally. I'm a late waker naturally. And also that I need about 8.5 hours sleep if I'm going to feel refreshed. So it tells you your circadian rhythm and your sleep duration, and then you work backwards from there. Now, not everybody can get up at 9 because we all have things to do. However, if you are the sort of person who is a late sleeper, getting yourself into a schedule of sleeping a bit earlier is going to be difficult, but don't beat yourself up about it, because you are naturally a late sleeper and the world is not built for you, my friend. So
Yeah. Move to another time zone.
Yeah. So it is possible to move your body clock a little bit earlier, but people who are morning people are always going to have a bit of an easier time of that than evening people. So regular routine, work out what your natural pattern is and try and work as close to that as you can.
I've heard you talk about sleep duration there. And, again, we hear this thing of 7 hours is the optimum for people. But again, how flexible is that in terms of what's good for us human beings?
It's flexible, but it's not I can sleep 4 hours a night and be fine flexible. I never really believe people when they say that. So I think don't put stock in the 8 hours, 7 hours thing. I think the holiday question I just asked you gives you a good insight into your personal sleep duration. I think anything from, some people are 6 hours, some people are 11 hours. It really depends on your biology and your makeup. But I think if you're getting anything less than about 6 hours sleep, you're probably doing yourself a disservice. So yeah, the thing to really ask yourself is, imagine that holiday question. If you normally are if in that situation you need 8 hours sleep and you're getting 6 hours sleep, that means every day you're 2 hours sleep deprived, and that means by the end of the week you are, I don't know, what's 14 hours sleep deprived. So yeah, it's really trying to understand your body. It's really hard with real life commitments and everything that goes on, but actually having the knowledge about that for you will help you work back to that whenever you feel that you're straying away from it.
There's a question here about eating late due to work commitments, and if we tie that in with if you're eating late due to work commitments and then going to bed, what would you say about that?
Your one of the things I didn't say is that your circadian rhythm is, so all of our circadian rhythms, or as human beings, actually they run for about 25, 26 hours. So what we do is we train them to be a 24-hour day. So if you're a blind person who has no access to light, you will run on a 25 to 26-hour clock, which is really interesting, isn't it? And so they've done loads of studies on people who are blind. So there are several things we use in the environment for our brains to understand we run on a 24-hour clock. One of those is meal times. Okay, so your meal times being set during the day is really important. Now, if you're eating just before you go to sleep, it's a really big meal and we don't digest well overnight. Digestion overnight is not a natural physiological process. So it's always good to leave at least an hour between eating and going to sleep. However, if you do need to eat overnight, if you do need to eat because of work or because you get in and then you're knackered and you need to go to bed, make it a light meal, cheese and biscuits, something like porridge, something that's kind of slowly digestible, but that isn't going to, be so heavy that you're waking up because you've got a full stomach. Cheese actually has tryptophan in it, which helps melatonin. So there's an old wives' tale about cheese being bad for your sleep. It's not. It's really good for your sleep. so have a bit of cheese.
Everyone, I love cheese. This is great news.
So yeah, the other thing to say, which is really important, there are so many things to say, so I'll try and keep it brief. But the most important part of setting your body clock is morning light, because it sets off that whole graph. So they've done loads of studies so I work in hospitals with inpatients who don't get a huge amount of light change because they're on wards. And they've done loads of studies to show that if those people get 30 minutes of bright white light first thing in the morning, so within 30 minutes of waking up, they sleep much better at night. So if you want to set your body clock, meals are important, but also get outside or open the curtains, stick your head out for 30 minutes. Now, I live in Glasgow. It's never light in Glasgow. It's never. So I have a sun lamp that I turn on first thing in the morning to set my circadian rhythm off. So yeah, regularity of meals, morning light, so important.
And then how about keeping the bedroom dark? So if morning light is important, do we have to have blackout curtains in our bedrooms?
Yeah. All of this is about really reinforcing to the brain that it is nighttime and time to sleep. So absolutely, blackout blinds are hugely important. The temperature of your room is also hugely important. The ideal sleeping temperature for human beings is between 16 and 18 degrees Celsius, so much cooler than you think. What happens before we get into bed is we have a body temperature drop, and then that happens again overnight. So that's why they say have a nice warm shower or something, get out of the shower, it simulates that body temperature drop, get into a really cool room, go to sleep. So blackout blinds, really important. Room temperature, really important. If you hate the idea of sleeping in the pitch black, get a red light bulb for the evenings, because red doesn't interfere with melatonin. The red light spectrum doesn't interfere with melatonin. It looks real creepy, but it's really worth it in the end because again, it's a signal to your brain that, oh, this is when we sleep. When the red light goes on, that's when we sleep. So yeah, those are really important things for the environment. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Has anyone ever tried like background noise whilst sleeping? White noise machines or anything like that?
I've certainly come across people who do have a white noise machine that helps them. Almost it feels anxiety reducing, I suppose. It's a calming measure.
So the important thing to say about any background noise is, if you remember in that graph, I said we wake up naturally several times a night. Now, whatever your brain needs to fall asleep at the beginning of the night, it will need again to fall asleep at all those points. So if you have a white noise machine, you have to keep it on all night, because all that will happen is that when you come to the end of a sleep cycle, if that noise machine has gone off, your brain is going to go, there was noise. Now there's no noise. Can you wake up, please, and just go and check everything's okay? So it will wake you up fully to investigate the change. Any noise you have it on all night. If you can't stand a white noise machine, sometimes having a fan in the bedroom is really useful, because it gives you double benefit of cool bedroom and constant background noise, and that can be really helpful for people. So I'd say that the understanding that my brain needs whatever it had to fall asleep again through the night, it needs all the conditions to be exactly the same, has been the thing which has changed my sleep the most. Because I used to fall asleep to like lovely lights, lots of music, radio playing. It was really relaxing. And then I would wake up and everything was dark and everything was cold and there was no music and it was really confusing. My poor brain was like, what is going on? And it's important to keep things very consistent, and that's really helped me.
Okay. A quick question, one question here before we go into physical health and pain a little bit more as well.
Sure.
It's a question here about teenagers. Why do they seem to struggle to go to sleep early and get up early? This seems to change again as they get older. That's definitely a thing, isn't it?
Oh, yes. So my poor teenage cohort. So I'm a pediatric sleep psychologist for one of the jobs that I do. And I'm part of many national campaigns at the moment trying to get schools for teenagers to move their start times later. Because when you are a teenager, your body clock shifts by a few hours away from what it is when you're a child. And then it shifts back again when you hit adulthood. For some people it stays late. it's a physiological thing that happens. So it is a real biological stuff that's going on for teenagers, which means that their body clocks don't kick off until later, and they don't make them sleepy until later. If we were to really build our world to help teenagers learn, we would be starting school times later, because asking a teenager to start school at 9 is like asking you to start work at 7. So I don't know about you, but I'm no good to anyone at 7 a.m. And if I had to wake up at sort of 5:30 to start work at 7, I would be knackered. So there are many teenagers who are really quite sleep deprived because they're being asked to wake up much earlier than they should be. And what most of them do is they sleep all weekend to try and catch up. So I think Jill asked this question. Jill, it's a real thing, and I think if you've got sleepy teenagers at home, the best thing you can do for them is just allow them to sleep a bit in the weekend to catch up, or ask their schools to start their timetables later. Hopefully we can get that going nationally. They're not being lazy. Sometimes they're being lazy, but a lot of the time it's to do with their circadian rhythm.
Yeah. And is that it's being affected because of the hormonal change that's happening at that age?
Yeah, hormonal change and brain changes. There's lots of things which affect your sleep cycles. But yeah, it's really, I really feel for the teenagers.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about sleep that's interrupted and how that might then impact physical health and pain?
Yeah. So that's a really interesting. I've done a really recent look into this for some training I did, and yeah. So what we've always understood, I think everyone who's been in pain, but also professionals, is that you get into a bit of a cycle. Your pain is worse, so you sleep less, and then that can make your pain worse. Because when we sleep less, I talked about the hypnogram, the sleep graph, and I said we do all of our lovely body growth, repair, hormone regulation in that deep sleep. If we're getting very interrupted sleep, we're going to not be doing as much of that, and it will make our inflammation worse. So we've always known that. However, recently they've realized that actually the direction between having worse sleep and more pain is stronger than the other way around. I'll try and explain that better. So what that means is, if you deprive people who don't have pain conditions of sleep, they will develop pain because they are not having the sleep that they need to get their nervous system in check to manage what's going on. And what that means is, I don't know how you've all found it, but I have definitely found that sleep isn't really attended to very well in health services, because what we just assume is that, well, you're not sleeping because you've got pain, but actually it works the other way around. Your pain might be worse because you aren't having a good night's sleep. So there's a big argument for actually intervening in sleep as a really important part of pain management, because if you can get better sleep, your pain might feel a little bit better. I don't know about you, but I really know it when I've had a bad night's sleep. I really feel it in terms of pain. I really do. So I think it's a really important part of that work, I think.
I think just to repeat what you said there, because this is so important. If we take people who are healthy and deprive them of sleep, they will experience pain.
Yeah, they will.
It's important.
So important. And I'm trying to what I'll do is, after this I will send you the reference for that, because there is a paper which did this study and looked into it and found that you can, healthy volunteers show that you can induce pain with sleep deprivation, and I guess so I would say, don't neglect your sleep, and ask your physicians for sleep help and sleep support where possible.
Would you suggest people who are struggling to perhaps ask their GP if melatonin can be prescribed?
Yeah, I think if you're really struggling with sleep, it's really worth it. I would say melatonin, however, is, like as I said before, not a sedative. So it's not the same as a sleeping pill, which will put you to sleep. It will just amplify the signal, but it's that scared deer. And if you are on your phone, if you are feeling very anxious, very stressed, if you don't have a regular routine, if your bedroom is too hot, if there's light coming through your blinds, that will scare melatonin off. No amount of melatonin is going to make that any better. And actually, you only need a really quite low dose of melatonin to be effective, and you know it's been effective immediately. So if it's not working, it's not working. So it doesn't need to build up in the system or anything.
Okay. Now we have, we live in an age of apps, and we depend on apps, and people who use sleep apps and, their watches and all sorts to measure whether they're getting a good level of sleep. And someone here has mentioned, is deep sleep important? I never get a lot. So her device says 4 minutes of deep sleep is all she got. Are these apps and devices, are they accurate in measuring whether we might have deep sleep or not?
If I could do one thing, I would tell Fitbit to stop doing this, because no, they're not. We within our sleep clinic have things called actigraphy watches, which measure your sleep overnight, okay, which is similar to what you'll be wearing. We don't assume accuracy, even with, really, really super expensive medical grade watches. The only thing that can tell you, truthfully, whether you have had deep sleep is if you had electrodes stuck all over your brain that were measuring your brain waves. What your Fitbit is doing, or what your watch is doing, is it's measuring how much you're moving overnight. Movement is not an indication of levels of deep sleep, and then they're really not very accurate at all. More than that, I'm going to try not to rant here. More than that, they are actively unhelpful. We did one of my friends. So we have an association of clinical psychologists in sleep medicine. One of the people in that is a guy called Dmitry Gavalov, who works in Oxford. He did a study really recently. I don't know how he got this past ethics really, but he gave people these kind of sleep watches, and what they did is they fed back to them what kind of sleep they had, except they were giving half of the group sham results, and they were telling them that they'd had a bad night's sleep regardless of whether they'd had a bad night's sleep or not. What they found from that study is if you were told you were going to have a bad night's sleep, that you had a bad night's sleep on night 1, you will have a bad night's sleep on night 2.
Yeah.
Because your brain is going, well, I can't sleep. I haven't been sleeping. So really these devices are not accurate. And more than anything, sleep is like one of those things that the more you try and chase it, the further away it goes. Mm-hmm. And I had a Fitbit before I started working in sleep. I used to track my sleep cycles and be like, oh my God, I'm getting no sleep. Then I went, then I started working in sleep, and I realized they really shouldn't be. If I was queen of the world, I would pull all of that software immediately, because it just really stressed me out. And I think if you think that you are having a bad night's sleep, that should be enough for you to know that, because it's subjectively that's enough for you to know that. So I guess what I will also say is, if you've had a bad night's sleep on night 1, your body will compensate on night 2. So say for instance you've had a lot of the light sleep but you haven't had enough of the deep sleep, your body will up the deep sleep on night 2 because it reacts to how tired you are and what you need. Brains are quite clever, and they will try and really hard, clever and really stupid from a melatonin point of view, but they will try really hard to give you what you need to repair and grow, depending on your age really. So
which is great. So if it can tune into how tired you are and what you need the next night, and actually these apps and devices, they're detrimental. Chuck them out or stop using them.
Please stop using them.
Your brain will do the right thing for you, hopefully.
It's really hard to feel like that at 3 a.m. when you are woken up, you're in pain, you can't move, you're thinking that your partner is snoring and you're feeling furious because they're fast asleep and you're awake. And I think
it sounds like it's coming from personal experience.
It's my partner really hates that I talk about him in these talks, but it's true, he sleeps really well, and I'm really annoyed. But yeah, it's really important to know that you in order to be able to sleep, what really needs to happen is you need to accept that sleep will come eventually. And the more you calm, the more you're able to, the less you're stressing out your brain, basically, the less your brain is freaking out that sleep will never happen. Because it can feel like that, can't it? It's 3 a.m, you're like, I've got to get up in 4 hours, or the kids are going to start screaming in 3 hours, and you watch the clock count down and it's terrible. But yeah, the watches aren't helping that.
Yeah, I just wonder if you wake up and you do not look at the time, that's going to be so helpful.
Yeah, it really is.
Said than done. But I know if I wake up and I look at that clock and I'm working out this many hours, I'm probably back to sleep. But don't look at it and I'll be okay.
Yeah.
There's a couple of people here that talk about teeth grinding.
Okay,
and a mouth guard, which is reduce the damage to the inside of their cheek. But sometimes they wake up with headaches, even though they feel like they've slept well. Any welcome. There's a couple of people in that boat.
Okay, I guess I'm going to take that torch off because I thought it was helpful, but it's not. Okay, I'm just looking at the comments now. The mouth guard sometimes wake up with headaches. So I guess the thing that I would say is I'm a little reluctant to comment too expressly on this because people teeth grind for different reasons. I guess if you're a stress teeth grinder, then I think the reason that you're waking up with headaches is because even with a mouth guard, you will be clamping. I would ask, and I guess it's Amanda who's talking about this, about whether or not you've had any support from your GP or from physical health services about how to release some of that stress before you go to bed at night with progressive muscle relaxation. So a lot of people find it really helpful to, before you go to bed, what I mean by progressive muscle relaxation is to clench your jaw really tight and then release, and clench your jaw really tight and then release, so that your brain gets a real understanding whilst you're awake of what it feels like to have a relaxed jaw. And then the more you do that in the day, and the more you do that kind of relaxation activity, the more that your brain will unconsciously pick it up overnight. If you're teeth grinding for a more physical reason, if there's another reason, a neurological or other reason that you're teeth grinding, then I wouldn't be able to comment on that in this talk, but definitely go and speak to your GP about ways that you can have physical relaxation overnight, I would say. I hope that's helpful. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that is helpful. So kind of just clenching the jaw and then releasing it several times during the day. And we know when it comes to the jaw, we often say if you can learn to kind of relax the jaw, our pelvic floor muscles can relax too. And so often, rather than getting people to do pelvic floor exercises, we say actually relax the jaw. So I don't know whether it's just going to be relaxing the jaw or clenching and relaxing the jaw. And again, if you have vulval pain, talk to your physio about that. What might be helpful for you. And if there isn't a reason for it, now if you're anxious or stressed about something, we do have this tendency to clench pelvic floor muscles or clench our jaw. But if it isn't either one of those things, definitely speak to your GP, because a mouth guard is only just stopping saving your teeth. It's not looking at what the possible cause might be. So just to make sure there's nothing else going on would be useful.
That's what I would say also.
Yeah. Someone mentions here that they've had less headaches since using the guard. So great.
Great. That's useful. I wonder, that's so interesting.
So, all right. Now, look, we could have gone in all sorts of directions with this, and I can see we're coming up to the hour. So I wonder if there were a couple of points that you'd like people to take away with them from what we've covered, or something we haven't covered even. What might they be? Okay, good sleep. Several things. I've got maybe 3 things that I think are important.
Good sleep is about almost tricking your brain or giving your brain a really strong signal that it is time for bed. So whatever you can do to do that in your environment will really help you. So that is, I have a parent who turns the bed around at night time so that it gives the kid a really strong signal that it's time to sleep. So that is dim lights, cool temperature, turning off screens, doing all of that sleep hygiene stuff we all know about. But doing it really consistently, and even if you think it's not going to work, do it anyway, because it can't hurt, and more routine is really helpful. So that's number one. Number two is night waking is absolutely normal, however, doesn't feel like it. The question isn't, why are you waking? The question is, why are you not falling back to sleep again? And for a lot of people who suffer with pain, it's because your brain has gone, you're in pain, wake up. And I guess for you, everyone's going to have a different way of doing things, but try and find your own routine in those moments. You might wake up, and maybe that's okay for you to wake up, go and sit in a different chair, chill out, and come back to bed again. And then the last thing I would say was throw away your Fitbits, please. be the final things. I guess work well. No, more seriously, really understand your own body clock and sleep duration needs and work backwards from there. But also throw away your Fitbits, please. That's what I would say.
Brilliant. That was absolutely superb, Shreena. Dr. Shreena, hold on, let me get this right. What was the thing that helped me to remember?
Unadkat.
Unadkat.
There you
Dr.
go.
Shreena, clinical psychologist and senior lecturer. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're very welcome, and I really hope it's helpful. And yeah, please do. I'm on Twitter, so is Mike, who's the physician in our team. Come to our Twitter accounts. We tweet about sleep all the time.
Brilliant. And we will pop up those.
Great.
I've lost the ability to think what they're called. Twitter handles. I will chuck those up.
Thank you.
In the comments. I think we're all a little bit better informed after that, and hopefully, we'll go away and perhaps think about what changes we might need to make as well, if appropriate. If you joined us late, if you missed any part of this live stream, or you'd like to rewatch it, or any of this series, of which this is number 15, so there are now 15, you can do so via our Facebook page or on our YouTube channel, and I've popped the links in the comments. Now, we're going to take a very short 1 month break from the live streams, so you are going to have plenty of time to catch up on any of those lives that we've had. We've covered gynecology and pain clinic appointments, physiotherapy, vulval skin conditions, vulvodynia research, and ACT was part of that. Psychosexual medicine, vulval cancer, menopause, vaginal examination in labour and consent, the gut microbiome, which is really fascinating. All of them are fascinating, and pudendal neuralgia. And today we've looked at the connection between sleep and physical health. You'll also find lots of useful resources on our website, vulvalpainsociety.org. Whether you experience vulval pain or you're a healthcare professional, lots of resources on there. And if you want to reach out and get in touch, you can do so via email. info@vulvalpainsociety.org. If you'd like to be kept in the loop about upcoming events, also new resources or studies, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And we really appreciate those of you who already follow and interact with us, and who also share posts or retweet. All of that's really useful, because as we always say, at least 1 in 7 women experience vulval pain in their lifetime. And pain is common. So we will have more general things about pain, because they will be relevant for people experiencing vulval pain too. So listen, thank you all for helping us to help you better. Our next live stream then is going to be 7 p.m. on Wednesday, the 15th of September, with my fellow trustee, Dr. Winston de Mello. Now, Dr. Winston if you've caught him before in any of our lives, you'll probably realise he's a font of all knowledge. He's brilliant. Next time, he's going to be talking about bladder pain syndrome or interstitial cystitis. So there's a complexity to this, which Dr. Winston is going to help us unpack so that we can be better informed. We'll be looking at contributing factors and appropriate treatment routes as well. So do join us. And I know that Winston likes answering questions. So bring yourselves and bring your questions. Wednesday the 15th, 15th September, 7 p.m. BST. That's all from the Vulval Pain Society now. Thank you again. Dr. Shreena, thank you so much. Thank you.
You're very welcome. This was great. Thanks so much for inviting me along.
It's been lovely. And a huge thank you to everyone for joining us live or on the replay. Bye for now. See you next time.
Bye.